Emma Skate. Today I'm going to be reading to you from page 21 on Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, Christine Andrew, on YouTube. Thank you. Final point. Your feelings and reactions, Dan, are automatic and predictable. Mine are not. I create my life spontaneously. Yours is determined by your thoughts, your emotions, your pasts. How can you assume all this about me, about my past? Because I've been watching you for years. Sure you have, I said, waiting for the joke. None came. It was getting late and I had a lot to think about. I felt burdened by a new obligation, one I wasn't sure I could fulfill. Socrates came in, wiped his hands, and filled his mug with spring water. As he sipped slowly, I said, "I've got to go now, Soc. It's late and I have a lot of important schoolwork to do." Socrates remained quietly seated as I stood and put on my jacket. Then, as I was about to get out of the door, he spoke slowly and carefully. Each word had the effect of a gentle slap on my cheek. "You had better reconsider your importances. If you are to have even a chance of becoming a warrior, right now, you have the intelligence of a jackass. Your spirit is mush. You do have a great deal of important work to do, but in a different classroom than you now imagine." I'd been staring at the floor. I slapped my head up to face him, but I couldn't look him in the eye. I turned away. "To survive the lessons ahead," he continued, "you're going to need far more energy than ever before. You'll have to cleanse your body of tension, free your mind of stagnant beliefs, and open your heart to loving kindness. Soc, I better explain my time schedule. I want you to understand how busy I am. I'd like to visit with you often, but I have so little time." He looked at me with somber eyes. "You even have less time than you might imagine." "What do you mean?" I gasped. "Never mind that now," he said. "Go on." "Well, I have these goals. I want to be a champion gymnast. I want my team to win the national championships. I want to graduate in good standing, and that means books to read and papers to write. What you seem to be offering me instead is staying up half the night in a gas station, listening to, I hope you won't take this as an insult, a very strange man who wants to draw me into his fantasy world. It's crazy." "Yes," he smiled sadly, "it is crazy." Socrates sat back in his chair and looked down at the floor. My mind rebelled at his helpless old man ploy, but my heart was drawn to this robust old eccentric who claimed to be some kind of warrior. I sat back down. Then a story that my grandfather had told me came to my mind. There was once a beloved king whose castle was on a high hill overlooking his shire. He was so popular that the nearby townspeople sent him gifts daily, and his birthday celebration was enjoyed throughout the kingdom. The people loved him for his renowned wisdom and fair judgments. One day, tragedy struck the town. The water supply was polluted, and every man, woman, and child went insane. Only the king, who had a private spring, was spared. Soon after the tragedy, the mad townspeople began speaking of how the king was acting strangely, and how his judgments were poor and his wisdom a sham. Many even went so far as to say that the king had gone crazy. His popularity soon vanished. No longer did the people bring him gifts or celebrate his birthday. The lonely king, high on the hill, had no company at all. One day he decided to leave the hill and pay a visit to the town. It was a warm day, so he drank from the village fountain. That night there was a great celebration. The people rejoiced, for the beloved king had regained his sanity. I realized then that the crazy world that Socrates had referred to was not his world at all, but mine. I I stood ready to leave. Socrates, you've told me to listen to my own body intuition and not depend on what I read or what people tell me. Why then should I sit quietly and listen to what you tell me? A very good question, he answered. There's an equally good answer. First of all, I speak to you from my own experience. I'm not relating abstract theories I read in a book or heard secondhand from an expert. I am one who truly knows his body and mind, and therefore knows others as well. Besides, he smiled, how do you know that I'm not your own intuition speaking up to you now? He turned to his desk and picked up some paperwork. I had been dismissed for the evening. My whirling thoughts carried me into the night. I was upset for days after work. I felt weak and inadequate around this man, and I was angry about the way he treated me. He constantly seemed to underestimate me. I wasn't a child. Why should I choose to play a jackass sitting in a gas station? I thought, when here in my domain, I'm admired and respected. I trained harder than ever in gymnastics. My body burned as I flew and fought my way through routine after routine. Yet it was somehow less satisfying than before. Every time I learned a new move or received a compliment, I remember being tossed into the air onto the couch by that old man. Hal, my coach, had become concerned about me and wanted to know if anything was wrong. I reassured him that everything was fine, but it wasn't. I didn't feel like joking around with the guys on the team anymore. I was just confused. That night, I dreamed of death again, but with a difference. A chortling Socrates, decked out in the Grim Reaper's gloomy get-up, pointed a gun at me. That went off, shooting out a flag that said, bang. I woke up laughing for a change. The next day, I found a note in my mailbox. All it said was, rooftop secrets. When Socrates arrived at the station that night, I was already sitting on the steps waiting for him. Page 24. I come early to question the day attendants about Socrates to find out his real name, even where he lived, but they didn't know anything about him. Who cares anyway, one yawned. He's just some old geezer who likes the night shift. Sock removed his windbreaker. Well, I pounced. Are you finally going to tell me how you got up on the roof? Yes, I am. I think you're ready to hear it, he said. Seriously. In ancient Japan, there existed an elite group of warrior assassins. He said the last word with a hissing sound, making me acutely aware of the dark silence lurking outside. My neck started to get that prickly feeling again. These warriors, he continued, were named ninja. The legends and reputation surrounding them were fearful. It was said that they could change themselves into animals. It was even said that they could fly, for short distances only, of course. Of course, I agreed, feeling the door to the dream world blow up with a chill gust. I wondered what he was leading up to when he beckoned me into the garage where he was working on a Japanese sports car. Got to change the plugs, Socrates said, ducking his head under the sleek hood. Yes, but what about the rooftop, I urged. I'll get to it in a moment. As soon as I change these plugs, be patient. What I'm about to tell you is worth waiting for, believe me. I sat toying with a mallet lying on the work table. From Socrates' corner I heard, you know, this is a very amusing work if you really pay attention to it. For him, it was, perhaps. Suddenly he put down the plugs, ran over to the light switch and flicked it, in a darkness so total that I couldn't even see my hands in front of me. I began to get nervous. I never knew what Socrates would do, and after that talk about ninja. Sock! Sock! Where are you? He yelled from directly behind me. I spun around and fell onto the hood of a Chevy. I don't know, I stammered. Absolutely right, he said, turning on all the lights. I guess you're getting smarter, he said with a Cheshire cat grin. I shook my head at his lunacy and perched myself on the Chevy's fender, glancing under the open hood to find its innard missings. Socrates, will you quit clowning and get on with it? As he deftly screwed in the new plugs, unsnapped the distributor cap, and examined the rotors, he continued. These ninja were not practitioners of magic. Their secret was the most intense physical and mental training known to man. Socrates, where is all this leading? To see where something leads, it's best to wait until you reach the end, he replied and continued with the story. The ninja could swim wearing heavy armor. They could climb sheer walls like lizards, until using only fingers and toes in tiny cracks. They designed imaginative scaling ropes, dark and nearly invisible, and used clever means of hiding tricks of distraction, illusion, and escape. The ninja, he finally added, were great jumpers. Now we're getting somewhere. I almost rubbed my hands in anticipation. The young warrior, when still a child, would be trained in jumping in the following manner. He was given a corn seed and told to plant it. Just as the stalk was beginning to grow, the young warrior would jump over the small stalk many, many times. Each day the stalk would grow. Each day the child would jump. Soon the stalk was higher than the child's head, but that wouldn't stop him. Finally, if he failed to clear the stalk, he would be given a new seed and would begin over. Eventually, there was no stalk that the young ninja could not leap over. Well, then what? What is the secret? I asked, waiting for the final revelation. Socrates paused and took a deep breath. So you see, the young ninja practiced with corn stalks. I practice with gas stations. Silence filled the room. Then suddenly Sock's musical laughter pealed through the station. He was laughing so hard he had to lean against the Datsun he'd been working on. So that's it, huh? That's what you're going to tell me about rooftops? Dan, that is all you can know until you can do, he answered. You mean you're going to teach me how to jump up on the rooftop, I asked, my demeanor suddenly brightening. Maybe, maybe not. For now, toss me that screwdriver, will you? I threw it to him. I swear he grabbed it out of the air while I looked into the other direction. He finished with it quickly and tossed it back to me, yelling, "Heads up." I dropped it and it fell to the floor with a loud clatter. This was exasperating. I didn't know how much more ridicule I could take. The weeks passed quickly and my sleepless nights became commonplace. Somehow I adjusted, and there was another change. I found that my visit with Socrates were becoming even more interesting to me than gymnastics practice. Each night while we serviced cars, he put the gas in, I did windows, and both of us joked with customers. He would encourage me to talk about my life. He was strangely silent about his own, meeting my questions with a terse later, or answering in incomplete non-sequiturs. When I asked him why he was so interested in the details of my life, he said, I need to understand your personal illusions to grasp the scope of your illness. We are going to have to clear your mind before the door to the warrior's way can open. Don't you touch my mind. I like it just the way it is. If you really like it the way it is, you wouldn't be here now. You changed your mind many times in the past. Soon you're going to do it in a more profound way. After that, I decided I was going to have to be very careful with this man. I didn't know him all that well, and I still wasn't sure how crazy he was. As it was, Sock's style was constantly changing, unorthodox, humorous, and even bizarre. Once he ran screaming after a little white dog that had just peed on the station steps right in the middle of a lecture he was giving me on the supreme benefits of an unshakably serene composure. Another time, about a week later, after we stayed up all night, we walked to Strawberry Creek and stood on a bridge, looked down at the stream, overflowing with the winter rains. I wonder how deep the stream is today, I casually remarked, gazing absent-mindedly down into the rushing waters. The next thing I knew, I'd be splashed into the churning, muddy brown water. He tossed me off the bridge. Well, how deep is it? Deep enough, I sputtered, dragging myself and my waterlogged clothes to shore. So much for idle speculation. I made a mental note to keep my mouth shut. As the days passed, I started to notice more and more differences between us. In the office, I'd devour candy bars when I got hungry. Sock munched on a fresh apple or pear or made himself herb tea. I fidgeted around on the couch while he sat serenely still on his chair like a Buddha. My movements were awkward and noisy compared to the way he softly glided across the floor. And he was an old man, mind you. Just got to get a little comfortable again. There were small lessons that awaited me each night, even in the early days. One night I made the mistake of complaining how people at school just didn't seem to act very friendly toward me. Softly, he said, "It is better for you to take responsibility for your life as it is, instead of blaming others or circumstances for your predicament. As your eyes open, you'll see that your state of health, happiness, and every circumstance of your life has been, in large part, arranged by you, consciously or unconsciously." I don't know what you mean, but I don't think I agree with it. I once knew a guy like you. I met him on a construction site in the Midwest. When the lunch whistle blew, all the workers would sit down together to eat, and every day Sam would open his lunch pail and start to complain. "Son of a gun," he'd cry. "Not peanut butter and jelly sandwiches again. I hate peanut butter and jelly." He whined about his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches day after day until one of the guys on the work crew finally said, "For Christ's sake, Sam, if you hate peanut butter and jelly so much, why don't you tell your old lady to make you something different?" "What do you mean, my old lady?" Sam replied. "I'm not married. I make my own sandwiches." Socrates paused, then added, we all make our own sandwiches." He handed me a brown bag with 2 sandwiches in it. "Do you want the cheese and tomato or the tomato and cheese?" he asked, grinning. "Oh, just give me either," I adjusted back. As we munched, Socrates said, "When you become fully responsible for your life, you can become fully human. Once you become human, you may discover what it means to be a warrior." "Thanks, Sock, for the food, for thought, and for belly," I bowed grandly. Then I put on my jacket and got ready to leave. I won't be by for a couple of weeks. Finals are coming up, and I also have some hard thinking to do. Before he can comment, I waved goodbye and left for home. I lost myself in the semester's last classes. My hours in the gym were spent in the hardest training I'd ever done. Whenever I stopped pushing myself, my thoughts and feelings began to stir uneasily. I felt the first signs of what was to become a growing sense of alienation from my everyday world. For the first time in my life, I had a choice between 2 distinct realities. One was crazy and one was sane. Wow. But I didn't know which was which, so I committed myself to neither. I couldn't shake a growing sense that maybe, just maybe, Socrates was not so eccentric after all. Perhaps his descriptions of my life had not been more accurate than I'd imagined. I began to really see how I acted with people, and what I saw began to disturb me. I was sociable enough. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. We're done for the day.